All right, and can everyone see that okay? All right. So today we're going to be talking about the artist support grants. My name is Kelly Schrader. I'm the community arts coordinator for United Arts. Joining us today is also Lisa McIntosh. She is our director of communications for United Arts. She will be monitoring the chat for this session. And then we also have Veronica Gutierrez joining us today, who will be doing Spanish interpretations. We're going to be talking about the Artist Support Grant Program today. I'm going to go over the program, the eligibility requirements for applicants, as well as the application process and the review process. We will have time at the very end for questions, so feel free to either hold your questions until the end or put them in the chat as we go so we can respond to them at the end of the presentation. If you do have extremely specific questions about your individual application or proposal, then I encourage you to save that and not put that in the chat if it's extremely specific, and reach out to me directly following the application workshop so that we can discuss that one-on-one. Lisa will go ahead and put my email in the chat, and feel free to reach out to me at any point during the program. So during this session, it is recorded and the session will be made available. The recorded session will be made available. If you have gotten the email for this workshop tonight, then I have your email and I will email out a link to the recorded session as well as a copy of the slide deck that I'm using today. There's also computer generated captions. So on your Zoom panel that's open on your screen right now, there are several options. There's an option to turn on computer generated captions if you hit the CC button. There is also a button, either a little globe, or if you don't see the globe, there's 3 dots. If you click on the 3 dots for more, there's an option to join the English channel as well as the Spanish channel. So if you need Spanish interpretations during this presentation, Veronica will be providing that. You just have to click the Spanish icon to tune into the Spanish channel. And again, we will have time for questions at the very end of the session. So feel free to hold on to those questions or put them in the chat as we go. Okay, so getting started really quick. For those of you who are not aware who the United Arts Council is or what we do, I just wanted to really briefly highlight some of our other services and programs that we offer to the region. United Arts Council runs an Artists in Schools program. We bring all sorts of disciplines of artists into schools across Wake County. We also run, in addition to the Artist Support Grant Program, we have several other grant programs for nonprofit organizations, for towns, municipalities. We offer arts integration services for teachers. We run a Wake Murals program that works on placing murals across Wake County. And we also run a Piedmont Laureate program. And that's just a few. We offer a lot of programs, including this one that we're talking about today, the Artist Support Grant Program. So the Artist Support Grant, this specific program, it used to be called the Professional Development Grants for Artists. And it also, before that, was the Regional Artist Project Grants. So if you're familiar with either of those, this is the same program. It just goes by a new name, Artist Support Grants. This restructuring happened during the COVID-19 crisis, and the North Carolina Arts Council was able to provide additional funding to arts councils such as United Arts to redistribute those grant funds to support more artists during COVID. So this grant program is funded by the North Carolina Arts Council, Raleigh Arts, as well as the United Arts Council. Some details about the program itself. Artist Support Grants is for individual artists or small groups of not unincorporated artists. I'll talk about a little bit more about eligibility later. Each one of these grants can be up to $1,500. So $1,500 is the maximum amount that you can request and be granted through the Artist Support Grant Program. The grants for this program are aimed to support professional and artistic development of an artist's career. The project period for this grant application will be from January 2023 through December 2023, so the 2023 calendar year. The deadline to apply to this program will be September 1st, 2022. So that's this upcoming September 1st for programs and funds that will be spent in the 2023 calendar year. A really cool thing about artist support grants is that it is growing. In 2020, when they first reintroduced this program as is, we had 19 grantees. In 2021, that grew to 62 grantees with over $83,000 awarded to artists in the area. And this year, the current year of projects, we had 69 grantees and over $100,000 awarded. So now we're looking towards 2023 and hope these numbers can keep on growing. So it's a really exciting time to be part of this program. All right, so some specifics we're going to get into here. First, let's talk about eligibility. So the Artist Support Grant Program is open to artists of all artistic disciplines. I get a lot of questions about people, especially like fiber artists, jewelry makers, people that don't, there are a lot of grant programs that exclude a lot of those types of makers. This program does not exclude any discipline. It is open to all artistic disciplines. This program is also open to artists at any stage in their career, emerging or established artists. This program is open to individuals, individual artists, or small unincorporated groups of collaborating artists. So that we would not be eligible, someone who is part of an official business entity would not be eligible to apply on behalf of the business entity. An unincorporated group of collaborating artists, as an example, would be maybe a band of musicians that's looking for a grant to fund recording of an album. That would be an appropriate project to propose, and that would be an eligible candidate. Applicants must also be at least 18 years old. They must be a US citizen or permanent resident alien to receive grant funds. And new this year is that previous grantees of this program must wait at least 2 cycles to reapply. So as this is not a retroactive policy, so it's just starting this year. If you've received grant funding from us in the past, you would be eligible unless you receive grant funds for this calendar year. So any recipient that receives funds from this program for 2022 would not be eligible to apply this year. If you didn't receive funds for a project this year, then you're eligible to apply. So if you do receive grant funding for this year, which would be for the 2023 calendar year, if you do receive grant funding, then you would not be eligible to reapply until 2024 for the 2025 calendar year. Our applications open in the summer preceding the year that the grant funds would be used. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, you have any questions, you're like, I have no idea if I'm eligible or not, feel free to reach out to me, email me, and I'm happy to check your eligibility status, especially before you spend a lot of time on this grant application. Save yourself some heartache and email me if you're not sure if you're eligible. So residency requirements. This program is for residents of Chatham, Harnett, Johnston, Lee, or Wake County in North Carolina. If you live outside of any of those counties, then this program is not for you. And I encourage you to look into the North Carolina Arts Council and find what arts council or arts agency is distributing the Artist Support Grant Program in your county. For residents of these 5 counties, you have to have lived within one or multiple of these counties for at least 1 year. For example, if you lived in Lee County and then moved to Wake County, you would still be eligible because you're at least 1 year residence in these 5 counties. It has to be at least 1 year of residence from the deadline of this application. So if you've been living in one of these 5 counties since or before August 31st of 2021, then you would be eligible to apply. Proof of residence may be required. We do not require that as part of the application, but we do require that you submit an address within those counties, and we might follow up for proof of residence if there are any questions regarding your residency status. If you are applying as part of a collaborating team of artists, then everyone on that team in your proposal must meet the residency requirements. Okay, so who is not eligible to apply? Artists who are sole proprietors of an organization that has received funding directly from the North Carolina Arts Council this year. So if you are the sole proprietor of an organization that has received funds of any program from the North Carolina Arts Council for this calendar year, then you would not be eligible to apply. Current board and staff members of any of the 5 arts councils in Chatham, Harnett, Johnston County, Lee County, or the United Arts Council of Raleigh and Wake County, any board members, staff members, or their immediate family members would not be eligible to apply. So I am not eligible to apply for this grant. My mom is not eligible to apply for this grant, etc. Students are not eligible to apply for this grant. That includes K through 12 as well as degree seeking programs. Students are not eligible to apply. And then of course, as I mentioned before, 2022 grantees. So if you received funding for this calendar year, you are not eligible to apply until the next cycle. So what can artist support grant funds be used towards? These grants can be used towards projects that enhance the skills of the artist, enhance your ability to create work, improve your business operations, or improve your capacity to bring the work to audiences. I'll go into this a little bit more specifically. But basically the grant, what we're looking for is projects and proposals that will enhance your ability to create work or bring you to the next phase in your artistic career. How will this fund help you grow as an artist and advance your craft as well as your reach? So some examples of these, completion or presentation of a work. If you don't have a specific project, but you need specific supplies for your craft, that is eligible. Purchasing art supplies, pieces of equipment that will help you in your practice, renting space for you to create in, those are all eligible proposals. Career promotion as well, promoting yourself as an artist, website development, hiring someone to manage a website or having funds to purchase and manage a website. Documenting your work, either having your work, professional photos taken of your work or videographers capturing your work, or the tools and equipment needed for you to capture and document your work, as well as presenting that online, whether it is a website or a digital portfolio. Those are all eligible requests. Training, classes, workshops, or professional conferences to help you improve your craft and grow as an artist. Those are eligible requests as well. And travel, transportation, lodging, and food. If it's related to your development as an artist, those are eligible requests as well. For example, if you would love to take this class in Nebraska on a very specific painting technique that you want to be more well-versed in, the travel, the workshop itself would be something that the grant funds could cover, as well as the travel to the workshop, food while you're attending the workshop, and lodging in Nebraska where you're going to this workshop. Those would all be relevant and appropriate requests for this grant fund to cover. And of course, the last thing that this grant can cover is the artist yourself. The Artist Support Grant Program is great in that up to 50% of the awarded grant dollars can be applied directly to yourself and used to pay you as an artist. So for example, the maximum you can request is $1,500. If you are awarded $1,500, up to $750 can go towards yourself, paying yourself as an artist. Likewise, if you requested $1,000, then up to $500 could be used to pay you as an artist. So 50% of your awarded dollars can be used as just a payment to yourself. So here are some examples of what the grant will not fund. Scholarships or undergraduate or graduate level education. So this can include tuition towards a degree seeking program of any kind. Scholarships and tuition are not eligible proposals for this program. A project that supports or opposes a particular candidate for public office. Any political candidacy or campaigning related materials is not appropriate requests for this program. They will not be funded. Projects that are exclusive to members of a particular religious faith group, so religious motivated projects are not appropriate. Nonprofit initiatives. So if, for example, if you are working with a nonprofit to fulfill one of their missions or one of their projects or goals, that would not be an appropriate use of these funds either, if you're affiliated or working with another nonprofit. Or projects that do not have a direct effect on the applicant's growth as an artist. This is a really key area that I want to emphasize. If you cannot make an argument for why your proposal will positively affect the growth of your career and help you achieve the next level in your artistic practice, then that is not going to be an eligible request. It will not get funded. So evaluation criteria. I'll talk a little bit about the evaluation process, but first here are the things that evaluators will be looking for when reviewing your application. This is the exact same rubric and same language that we will give the panelists that will be reviewing your application. So pay close attention to the language that we're using. I'll go through each of these individually, but the three areas of evaluation criteria are artistic merit, project feasibility, and contribution to the development of the artist's career. So first of all, artistic merit. What does your artistic work look like? Work samples that show artistic excellence, that you are committed to your artistic practice. You're not a hobbyist who paints a painting here and there every now and then. You're an artist and you are committed to your practice, and you have a body of work that shows that. Is there originality, inventiveness, and or cultural significance in the project proposed? Those are some examples of artistic merit that panelists will be looking for. The second area is project feasibility. Is your project feasible? Are you proposing too much more than you can do? Do you have a history of completing projects of a similar size and scope? Are you able to complete the project that you're proposing? Is your proposal clear and well organized, showing preparation and planning? Does your proposal have goals, and are those goals realistic and achievable? And does your budget show forethought and consideration? So you really want to take some time with your application. Don't just write it in 20 minutes and submit it. I want you to really take your time and come up with a plan of action on how you will be using these funds, some goals that you want to reach, and how you will be reaching those goals. Things like that and details and how you'll be spending the money make your project much more stronger and your application stronger, especially in that project feasibility area. So the third and final area that panelists will be looking at is professional development. Again, this goes back to the growth of the artist. Is the project consistent with the applicant's career stage? Are you biting off more than you can chew? Is this something for someone at a much lower level or a much higher level in their career than you? Or does this make sense with your career path that you've laid out in your application? Is this project meaningful in expanding and or promoting the applicant's artistic career? So how will your proposal help propel you and help you grow as an artist? That's definitely a big one that we emphasize with this program, is bringing artists to the next step. How can we help you elevate your practice? Some considerations. This is also some questions that the panelists might ask while going over your, or things that they might consider while going over applications. Does the applicant have a demonstrated talent in an art form and overall excellence of the artist's work? Do you show a clear commitment to a career as a practicing professional artist? Again, you can be an emerging artist, but we want to show that you have a committed practice and that you are committed to being an artist. It is all right if you have other forms of income. Most artists do. You do not have to be only a working artist and no other career. That is not what we mean by professional artist. We just mean that you have a track record of being committed to your art form. Is the benefit of the proposed project, is the proposed project beneficial to the artist's professional growth? There's that keyword again, the growth of the artist that we're looking for. And I also want to emphasize that panelists will be reviewing your application. They're asking these questions based on what you provide in the application. The panelists are not going to be able to call you and reach out to you to ask clarifying questions about your application. So be sure that you're thinking about these questions that they might ask while you're filling out your application, because the panelists will only be able to go off of what you're providing them in your application. They cannot contact you for follow-up questions. So we're talking about panelists. I want to talk about the panel review process. So once all of the applications comes in, I do not go through and say fund, not fund, fund, not fund. We don't do that. We have several layers of the review process. So the first one is I will go through the applications just to ensure that all of the eligibility requirements are met. So if you did not read the instructions or pay attention to the guidelines and you are not eligible to apply, but you applied anyway, you will not make it to the review round. Your application will get taken out of the pack before it gets to that step in the process. So we do have an initial screening of applications, but following that, it goes to a panel review process. The complete and eligible applications are reviewed by a multi-county panel of professional artists, college level instructors or administrators, and arts advocates with experience in various disciplines. So basically what I mean by that is when you fill out your application, one of the very first questions is for you to choose an artistic discipline. Once all of the applications come in, we sort them by artistic discipline and find panelists in those disciplines to review the applications. The panelists would not be people that have conflict of interest. They would not be people that know the applicants, but they would be members of the community that have a career in that area. So for example, we wouldn't have a bunch of dance instructors reviewing the painting applications because they really wouldn't know that much about painting. We would have people in the area that teach painting at the collegiate level or have had a long illustrious career in painting to review the painting applications. People that get it, that get the work that you're making. So the panelists will individually score each application based on those evaluation criteria that I mentioned before and make funding recommendations for their applications that they are assigned. Once those scores are compiled, we do have a meeting with each panel. We'll meet to discuss all of the applications as a group and make their final recommendations for funding. And then the last layer of that process is that those funding recommendations from panelists get sent to our board of directors at United Arts Council. And that is when the final funding decisions are made and signed off on by our board of directors. So there's a little bit more information about the actual review process of the application. I do also want to say that all of the panelists that are recruited to be members of the panels for these applications, they do remain anonymous. We do not release any of their information, but the feedback that they give us on those applications is available to you if you request it. So whether you receive funding or not, you can always reach out to us and just say, hey, I would love to get the feedback from the panelists on my application. And that's a great resource to use to strengthen your application for applying to this program in the future or applying to other grant programs. So the application itself, the application is live now. It's currently live. The deadline is September 1st. And the application is through Submittable. Submittable is an online platform that a lot of arts organizations use for similar programs and applications. You may have already used Submittable for something else in the past. If you have not used Submittable, then you will need to create an account. It's very quick and easy, and it's completely free. It's just a matter of having an email address to sign up for Submittable. And a great thing about Submittable is that it will actually save your progress within Submittable, so you don't have to worry about keeping a separate copy and uploading it into Submittable. It'll save your progress and you can save your application until you're ready to submit. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that we cannot see your application while you're working on it. We cannot see that your draft application. We can only see it after you have fully submitted your application. So I would advise you that if you start your application and do not submit it right away, be sure that you're checking back before the deadline that you have fully submitted your applications, because we will not be able to see it if it's just a draft. If you can't remember, you're not sure, just reach out to me and I'd be happy to confirm if you have submitted it or not. So I will go through a few things that are requested in the application. But first, my biggest piece of advice for filling out your application is to read the instructions carefully and thoroughly. Lisa will put a link to our website in the chat, and that also was the same link in the email I sent out with this Zoom information. That link has in English and Spanish the guidelines as well as the link to the application. The guidelines have a lot of the information I'm covering in this session today, but it's written out and you can refer back to it. I would encourage you, even if you're attending this session, I encourage you to still go back and read those guidelines carefully, as well as when you're completing the application, to please read the instructions fully of the application. It's always a shame if you spend a lot of time and energy on your application, but you didn't follow the directions and something happened where your name is not in the right field, or you didn't even put your name on the application. Something like that would just be a bummer if you spent all that work on the application. So please be sure to go through carefully and slowly and read the instructions for every question. Okay, so a few things in the application. We'll ask for some basic things such as your contact information. One of the very first questions will be the artist name or group name. So if you are applying on behalf of a band or a collaborating group of artists, then only one application should come from that group of artists. There should be one person. There's a section for artist or group name as well as contact name. So if you are the one person from your group submitting the application, you would be the point of contact for the application. We do not need 5 separate applications from every member of the collective. There should just be one application from each group or individual artist. The contact form is also a good tool to use if you or someone you know or are helping with the application maybe has some screen reading issues or comprehension issues, or speak a language other than English or Spanish that we don't have the application available, and you are acting as their point of contact on behalf of them and completing the application on their behalf. That's also where you would use that information that it says artist name or contact name. So if you are completing the application on behalf of someone, you would be the contact name and they would still be the artist name. Another thing we asked for that I mentioned earlier is the artistic discipline. So this will help determine what panel you get placed in. So there's a drop-down menu that you can choose your artistic discipline. We have 3D visual arts, 2D visual arts, etc., film. There's a lot of artistic disciplines listed. And new this year, we also have a discipline listed as other. So if you are a multidisciplinary artist and you don't want to put yourself in one category or the other, or you're not sure what category you belong in, or your discipline is not listed on one of our more popular categories that we have, then you can select the other category and we will be sure to review your application and place you in the most appropriate panel. Another big thing on the application is the project description. There are 2 sections. One will be a 1-sentence overview of your entire project proposal, and then another section that is a long form answer response where you can put in your full description of your project. And that is the section where you would want to lay out the who, what, when, where, why, and how of your project. This is a section that's very important that you refer back to those evaluation criteria and make sure that you're addressing those possible questions that panelists might be asking themselves. Be sure to include your attainable project goals and how you plan to reach those goals. Some other items that we'll be requesting in the application are an artist statement, and an artist CV or resume. These do not have to be written brand new for this application. If you already have an artist statement that exists, then you can use that in the application. If you do not have an artist statement or a CV or a resume made, you will have to make one for this application. But I encourage you to make one anyway and save a copy of it for yourself, because artist statements and CVs are something that is really good to have and very, very commonly asked for in applications and show applications. So if you do not have one already, this is a perfect chance for you to make yourself an artist statement and a CV. Some other items that I'll talk about more specifically are the budget, documentation, work samples, and then we also have some optional sections on supporting documentation if there's anything else we need to know about your project, as well as an optional area for letters of recommendation. So in the application, there'll be red asterisk that's marking the required areas. The section on letters of recommendation is not required, but it is optional if you want to try to strengthen your application with a letter of recommendation. That is the area that you can do that. So some specific areas that I want to focus on today. First is the project budget. So basically the project budget has to reflect what you are proposing in the project description, the language that you're using to talk about your project. The budget should tell the same story that you're telling in your project description. So all of the project expenses, things that you would spend the grant funds on, must occur during the project period. That's the calendar year, January 1st through December 31st of 2023. Again, up to 50% of the grant may be used to pay the artist applicant as an artist fee on your work for the project. That should be included in your budget if you would like to use the 50%. The budget should be consistent with a project description described in the project narrative area. And also in the budget, there will be a section of contributing funds if you have secured maybe another grant that you want to use towards this project, or if you have your own funds that you're using towards the project. Neither of those are required, but if they exist and are relevant to this proposed project, then you can, there will be an area for you to include. So if you have a project proposal that is over the $1,500 maximum that we're able to award to an individual, then you would have to list your additional funding sources if applicable. Again, that's not required. That's only if you do have alternative forms of funding available. So here is an example of, this is exactly what the application will look like. So this is an example of a project budget. And here's where that comes in of reading the instructions. You see in this one section, do not include $signs, only numbers. Please make sure that you're reading all of the instructions in the application, because if you do put $signs in these areas, it will just say all caps value and it will not come up with the appropriate number and it won't tally your numbers appropriately. You'll see it generating as you're filling out the application. So make sure you're reading carefully and not doing $signs here. So in the application under expenses, you'll have this area. There's several columns. Description of your expense, that's what the money will be spent on. The amount that the grant, the artist support grant, would pay towards that expense. The amount that the artist, yourself, or another grant funding source would pay, and then the totals down here. So for this example, I have a painting workshop on portrait techniques that I want to attend. And this painting workshop will greatly help me enable me to do portraiture, which is a great resource and a way to get my name out there as an artist. But I'm not very good at portraiture, and I really want to take this class that's $600 on portraiture. So I have $600. And the next section of the budget is also an area to include budget documentation. So for the painting workshop, maybe on the website that hosts the painting workshop, they have a list of the fees for each class. You could screenshot that says $600 and upload it in your budget. Boom, painting workshop is accounted for. The next thing on my list is gas to get to the workshop and lodging, because it's a 2-day workshop and I want to stay in a hotel. So I have $150 of this grant would pay that. For documentation, you could have a screenshot of a hotel in the area. It does not have to be exact, it can be an estimate. And I do recommend, if it is like $100.67, just round up to maybe $110. You don't have to be specific with pennies here. Food, I want to eat while I'm at this event, but I'm going to cover that myself. I have $100 that the artist will pay. And the artist fee, I'm requesting $1,500, so up to 50% is $750. I'm putting as artist fee that can pay myself. I don't need to include any documentation for the artist fee because it's going to be going to myself. You don't need to document your 50% artist fee. The last thing is this course has a fee for supplies for canvas and paint to use while I'm there. Well, I actually got a micro grant last month that is going to cover that. So I have that, and the artist would pay $250. And maybe I have a screenshot of the email notification that I got that $250 micro grant, and I'm going to screenshot that and put that in my budget documentation. So at the bottom, after this budget expenses grid, you scroll down and you see the income grid. This is the total income for your project. So the total amount that I'm requesting is $1,500. The total amount that I'm going to contribute to this project is $150. And the total amount that I had from that micro grant was $200. So the total income is $1,850 for this project, but only $1,500 of my budget is coming from the Artist Support Grant Program. So this $1,850 matches the $1,850 of total expenses over here. If you do not have alternate funding and you don't want to put your own money towards this project, you do not have to. That is not required. This is just an example. If you do not have any contributing funds outside of the grant, then your total should be at least or no more than $1,500. It can be less than that, but the maximum amount you can request is $1,500. So this is just an example. Hopefully that helps the way that you think about a budget a little bit more. And that after the budget is the little area for budget documentation where you would upload the screenshot of the workshop fee, a screenshot of the hotel fee. If you're looking for supplies, maybe a screenshot of Amazon or some online retailer of what the supplies cost, so that we're documenting your budget and that you have put thought into your budget and you know approximately how much these things will cost. Okay, another thing I want to focus on is the work samples. In the application, you will be asked to submit work samples, no matter what your artistic discipline is. Every discipline has to submit examples of their work. So your work sample should be strong, high quality examples. You should be selective about what you include. We do not need to see every piece of work that you've ever made, but it should be representative of your body of work, especially work that is relevant to the project that you're proposing. The samples can only be of your own work. If you did sound design for a video, then specify that I only did the sound in this video. I did not do the choreography, etc. If you had nothing to do with a project, you should not be including that project in your application. You should only include works that you have done, your own work in your application. The work samples should also be recent. We recommend samples from the past 3 years. So all of the work in your application should have been created within the past 3 years. And again, the panelists will only see what you provide. You will have an area to link to an online portfolio or a website if you want to have more examples of your work. But whatever is contained within your application is the only thing that the panelists will see. So you want to include enough work samples of your work that the panelists get a good idea of your commitment to your craft and your body of work and what your work looks like. But you also don't want to submit so much irrelevant work from different projects that might not make sense with your project and leaves the panelists with a lot of questions. So you want to make sure that you're careful with what work samples you submit and that they're relevant to the proposal that your application is about. Okay, so if you are selected to receive a grant, notifications will be emailed out in December of 2022. So whether or not you're selected, all notifications will occur via email. And in that email, I'll also include, if you do want to receive your the panelists, the anonymous panelist feedback from the review process, whether or not you receive the grant, I will have that information in the email that you can definitely reach out to me and set up a time to talk about the panelists' comments and reviews from your application. I strongly encourage you to do this even if you do receive the grant, because it is very helpful in seeing how your application was portrayed in how the panelists viewed your application, and it's a good opportunity to strengthen your application and grant writing skills for future opportunities. If you are chosen for funding, then you will have to sign a contractual agreement with United Arts. It's a very simple 2 to 3 page document, but you should read that document in full because it includes important information such as what items will be requested for the final report and how to document your progress on your project. As soon as you sign your contract with United Arts, 100% of the grant will be paid upfront. Some grant programs only award half of the grant up front and another half halfway through or towards the end of the project. But United Arts Artist Support Grants awards you 100% of the grant that you are awarded at the beginning of the calendar year. So you would receive your grant in January of 2023, and all expenses would happen in the calendar year of 2023. If you do receive your grant, and this information will be in your contract, and I also will hold, every year I'll hold a information session similar to this for grantees on how to document your progress, what grant projects look like, and what will be required for the final report. I usually hold that around February, so you'll still have an opportunity to know what items will be required of you as a grantee. But you will be required to acknowledge North Carolina Arts Council, Raleigh Arts, and United Arts as funders when appropriate for your grant project. The project funds that you'll be using must be spent by the end of that calendar year. So your project must be completed and all of your grant dollars accounted for by December 31st of 2023. And around January 2024, a final report will be required. This will be live at the beginning of the program, so you can review the final report before doing your project, so you're aware of what things to keep track of. And I always recommend people to complete the final report as soon as your project is finished. So it's much easier to submit that report when everything is fresh, as opposed to you finish your project in March and you waited until January of the following year. Oh man, I don't remember anything about my project, and now I have to dig for all these screenshots and I didn't document anything as it was happening. It's a lot more of a headache to do after the fact than if you keep up with it during your project. And again, in the grantee workshop in February, I have a lot of tips and tricks and checklists for you to use to document your progress. All right, that's all that I have today. We have time for questions at the end, and Lisa is going to go ahead and has been moderating the chat for me, and we're going to go ahead and get through some of these questions. If you have any other questions as we're going, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're just going to go in order that they came in.
I think you did such a great job, Kelly, that there's not a lot of questions, but there may be some more coming in because that was a lot of information. There is one. Can an artist submit more than one application proposal? And I think the answer is no, but yeah.
Great question. The answer is no. So you want to be sure that you are thinking really carefully about what your proposal will be for the Artist Support Grant Program. If you did submit multiple proposals, you would not only be competing with all of the other applicants, you would be competing with yourself for funding, and you don't want to compete with yourself. So no, you should not be submitting multiple applications. If you have an application as an individual artist, but you also are part of a band or a group of collaborating artists that are also looking to apply for our grant dollars, then I would encourage you to reach out to me so that I can make sure that there are no conflicts of interest between those two. But generally that would be okay. But again, you would be competing for yourself. We do not have separate categories for individuals and groups because we get so few collaboration applications. They're not individual pools of funds that we're pulling from those, so you would still be in direct competition with yourself. So no, you should not be submitting multiple applications.
The other question was,